Okay, hi everybody. I think I gave everybody a few minutes to get situated and everything. Hopefully everybody is ready to go. So we'll go ahead and get started. So thanks for attending today. Basically, I wanted to kind of go through a few of the more commonly used reports in the Insights tab in Marketplace, and with the recent change to kind of like the look and feel and some of the functionality of that section in Marketplace. Margaret and I thought that this might be valuable for some of you guys to kind of help with some of the monthly reporting or doing some shopping, things like that, analyzing how your Advantage Plus titles are circulating. So hopefully this will help, and I will send out the slide deck and a recording of the webinar after the meeting. We also have the chat function that Whit's manning right now, and we'll do our best to kind of announce the questions that are placed in the chat and answer them aloud so everybody can get the benefit of hearing those answers. So for any of you I haven't spoken with, my name is Nick. I am your OverDrive account manager here. I've been with OverDrive for a year now. And I manage the Atlantic territory, which includes New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, the Carolinas, Virginia, and DC. So pretty familiar with New Jersey. I'm very happy to be supporting you guys. You also have a product support specialist, one of Whit's colleagues here, Nicole Wilson, who I know that Margaret's pretty familiar with. And then you also have Kristen Milks, a content specialist who is a former librarian. She specializes in doing things like curation for the site. And if anybody needs, carts built, things of that nature, content specific questions, she's also great with. So you have a full team of people supporting you here. So we'll go ahead and get started with the Insights tab. And what you're going to have today is a review of the main landing page, the checkouts report, which was formerly known as circulation activity, specifically how to look at your Advantage Plus circulation stats, the current holds report, which used to be called the current waiting list report, recommendations, which is now called recommended titles, and then the purchase orders report as well. So it's a variety of useful tools and reports that will assist you in analyzing your collection, doing things like monthly reporting, like I said. So hopefully this will help and answer some questions that you guys might have had in the past. So the first thing that you'll see when you land on the Insights tab is the main landing page. So you'll have some useful information here that could be valuable to those of you who frequently do reports or even on an annual or monthly basis. So you have a summary of and a current holdings section on this page. So the summary section shows you a glimpse into the current activity of your collection for a period of time. So this time period is editable via the pencil icon. And I'll talk a little bit more about the current holdings section on the next slide. But I just wanted to show you real quick what this looks like in Marketplace. So I'm going to switch over there. So here you'll see the summary tab is front and center on the Insights landing page. And like I said, there's a little pencil icon that you can adjust the time period here. So it's pretty simple. Last will give you the option to search back a number of days, months, or years, and you can edit that number here. I usually do specific, and I'll actually enter a date in here. So you can either type a date in the box here or bring up a calendar icon. So what this is showing you is the total amount of checkouts, holds, and unique users for that time period. So this is actually the amount of total holds placed during that time period, as well as the amount of total checkouts that happened during that time period. And then the current holdings section is going to be a glimpse into what your collection looks like as far as the amount of titles and copies you have. The nice thing here is there's little radial buttons that you can select here that kind of show you the full collection as well as just your Advantage collection. So right now I'm logged into the Milburn Advantage account in Marketplace just as an example so you guys can see what this looks like. So if I click on the shared collection, it's just going to show me what is considered in your shared collection that's just purchased on the consortium level. And then if I uncheck that and look at just Advantage collection, you can see how many titles and copies that just the Milburn library has purchased. And then Advantage Plus is going to show you everything that's been shared by Advantage libraries with the rest of the group. And then if I click on all of the radio buttons, it's really going to show me the full picture of what's available to all the patrons in the group as far as available to borrow. So I'll jump back into my PowerPoint here. So as I was saying, the current holdings sections, the snapshot of the size of the collection. So again, it could be helpful for you guys who do annual reporting. You know, that's something that I frequently get questions on, usually every January, as far as the size of the collection. And this data was previously stored in a different place in Marketplace. So some of you who were kind of familiar with the way Marketplace operated before may not have been aware of where to find this now. So it could be useful data for you moving forward. And then the bottom of this page on the Insights main landing page is going to show you a snapshot of current checkouts, holds, and average waiting period. So that's active information right now. So it's showing you what's currently on hold, what's currently checked out, and then what your current average waiting period is. So the 26 days that you see here is going to be just an average amount of time that a patron's going to wait for a title when they are added to a wait list. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the checkouts report. So this is probably the most commonly used report in Marketplace. And you have a variety of options for looking at your library's circulation here. So if you're looking to analyze how your Advantage Plus shared titles are circulating specifically, you want to first ensure that you're logged into your Advantage Marketplace account. Like for example, right now I'm logged into the Milburn account, so that's what we're going to be using as an example today. But if any of you have a login for both Consortium and your Advantage account, when you are analyzing your Advantage Plus stats, you're going to want to make sure that you are logged into that individual Advantage account. So here, you're going to have a variety of options as far as filtering down to see different ways to look at the circulation activity of your specific library. So before I get into the Advantage Plus stats, I'll just kind of run through the different options that you have here. So this pretty much goes for every report in Marketplace. If you want to kind of do some filtering and narrow down the report results, the first thing you're always going to want to do is click Run New Report. So this is pretty self-explanatory, but there's different ways that you can filter information in here. The first is going to be checkouts by. So this is really what the report's going to spit out in terms of the data and how it's presented to you. I typically tend to do months when I'm looking at something like Advantage Plus statistics, but if you're really kind of concerned with something like format, if you want to look at, let's say, you want to know how Kindle checkouts, for instance, have been doing for the last 6 months, I can choose checkouts by format here, and then there's a variety of parameters that I have here. I chose the first radio button because I'm concerned with every checkout, regardless of if it's in my Advantage collection, the shared collection, or Advantage Plus. And then I'm just going to look at the last 6 months here for an example. So if I click Update here, it's going to pull these stats, and it's going to break down all the different formats that are available to a patron here. So if I'm specifically interested in Kindle books, like I said, I can see that there was just over 71,000 checkouts in the last 6 months of the Kindle format. And you'll notice here, these are hyperlinks. So if I want to drive down even deeper into those checkouts, I can click on that hyperlink, and then once this loads for me, it's going to have even greater detail as far as these titles that were checked out in that Kindle format. So you'll see it's going to show me the title, which is also a hyperlink that will take me right into your shopping interface, which will show you ownership details for that specific title. And then also additional details as far as who checked out that title, where the patron was from, which branch, the lending period, where it was borrowed from. So you see here, you can actually see which checkouts are coming from Libby or not, and then who bought that title. So in here, you'll see that the majority of these are bought by the consortium, but then you do have some Advantage Zone titles. So you can see some of these titles were actually purchased by Advantage libraries. So that's one way to look at the checkouts report, formerly known as circulation activity. As far as Advantage Plus reporting, which I know that the majority of you guys are concerned with, what we first want to do is, again, like I said, make sure that you're logged into the Advantage account. And then once you're in this checkouts report, the easiest way to look at this, I find, especially if you're doing it for a time period like 6 months, is to run it by month. And then the second thing that I'm going to do is make sure that this all branches is checked here. And this is pretty fluid. So if I click on another one of these, it's going to actually select that branch. So you want to make sure that you're clicked on all branches. If you want to look at more than one branch at a time, you can actually hold Control and highlight more than one branch in here. For our example today, I'm going to be looking at all branches now. So these 3 radio buttons here are really the key to looking at Advantage Plus statistics. So the bottom 2 are really what you're going to be concerned with. If I'm wanting to know how not just my Advantage Plus shared titles are doing, but how all Advantage Plus libraries shared titles are circulating, I'm going to want to use this middle button. If I'm only concerned with my Advantage owned titles, I would use the last one. But for our example today, I'm going to use this middle button and then update here. And so what I get here is the last 6 months of data, and these are all the checkouts for my Advantage owned titles. And again, I'm using Milburn as the example here. So these are all checkouts that occurred on the titles that I purchased in my Advantage account for the month of June. So you can see there's quite a bit here. And what I'm going to do is click on the number of checkouts. I can also see, or I can also click on the actual month name there. But what I find the most useful when looking at this is to export a sheet to Excel. So if you create a worksheet here, it's going to automatically create an Excel file for you. I've gone ahead and done that already, so I'm just going to share that Excel file with you guys. So this is what I end up with when I click in that June hyperlink that shows me all those checkouts that occurred in June. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is put a filter on this worksheet. And if I filter, I'm going to come over to this bought by column, and I'm going to find my library. So in this case, again, we're using Milburn. So I'm going to select that library. So this is going to show me all the checkouts that occurred on titles that I purchased in my Advantage account as the Milburn library. And you can see these branches here are different. They're not all Milburn. So these are going to be the branches that actually checked out that material that I purchased. So you can kind of filter in here if you wanted to look at individual library statistics, how that library is specifically checking out your materials. The other thing that I find helpful when I'm looking at this for a group, especially as large as yours, is I'll put a pivot table on this Excel sheet. So to do that, it's pretty simple. I highlight the top left-hand corner in Excel. It's going to gray out the entire sheet. And then I'm going to click on the Insert tab, and then just click on Pivot Table here. Since I already highlighted the whole form, I already have this range filtered in here, so I just hit OK. And this is going to bring me to the controls where I actually build my pivot table. And the real simple thing that I do here is I'll just bring down bought by on the right-hand side here into rows, and then branch I'm going to bring into values. So what this is showing me is the amount of checkouts that each library has each library has on the Milburn purchased titles. So you can see here, it's giving you a concise list of every library branch that you have in the system, as well as cons. So if I actually drill down into this data here, it's going to bring up another Excel sheet and actually show me that these are checkouts bought by checkouts from that specific library for Bergenfeld. conversely, Milburn, if I click on here, it's going to show me all the checkouts that occurred on by Milburn, or excuse me, titles purchased by Milburn. So this is a nice way just to kind of keep a big list of all the Advantage Plus checkouts by branch for your specific library. And I find it a lot easier to do in Excel than Marketplace, like I said. You can, do this in Marketplace by looking down here and kind of filtering or sorting by the bought by field or borrowed or the branch field here. But again, this is a lot to look at in here, and I do find it a lot easier to do in Excel. So hopefully that helps. I do have a document that I created that kind of breaks down those steps a little bit easier in a PDF. So I'll share that with the group as well afterwards. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you guys if you're ever kind of looking to get a picture of, how the circulation activity is going for the titles that you're purchasing in your Advantage collection, but then sharing with the group. So I'm going to hop back into PowerPoint. So the second report that we're going to take a look at is the current holds report. So this was formerly called current waiting list. So this is a cumulative report that shows all titles that are currently on hold in your collection. So there's additional data points presented here on the main current holds report screen, like the current average waiting period that we saw on that main landing page again, and then as well as the total number of users that are on a wait list. So this particular report is especially helpful when you're shopping for high demand titles in particular. So we'll switch over to Marketplace and I'll show you a little more details on this actual report in Marketplace. This current holds report is one of those other popular reports here that you'll find on the left-hand side. And again, like I said, there's just a breakdown of some general information here, like the current average waiting period, and then the total number of users on the waiting list by format here. So if I'm an individual library, we're again using Milburn as the example, and I just want to see what my individual library patrons have on hold, I can click Run New Report here and then actually choose my branch. So this is especially helpful for you guys if you're doing some shopping and you're trying to kind of take care of some of those high demand titles that your specific patrons might have on hold. So if I click on my branch and hit update, it's just going to give me a cumulative list of all the titles that my patrons have on hold. And what I typically would do here is I would sort by the number of holds here in my Advantage users. So I'm going to sort by descending. And then it's going to populate the most popular books. And shocker, Where the Crawdads Sing is the most popular book on this wait list. So you'll see some things here like ownership details, and then also the amount of holds and then the holds ratio for each of these titles, as well as some purchasing details like whether or not it's still available for sale, and then the price of the title. You'll notice this title is highlighted in pink. I would guess that the majority of you guys have figured out that these titles are actually pre-orders, so that's how they're going to display in the current waiting list report. So for an example here, if I'm looking at this report to help me to shop for some of those high demand titles, I'm going to look at specifically the amount of holds that my Advantage patrons have on the titles, and then also the amount of copies that are owned. So if I look in here and I'm looking for Advantage ratios that are maybe over 1 or 2. So I believe there was an example that I was going to use here. So Fleischman is in Trouble is a relatively new book. So this is one that I was going to use as an example. So I can see that as a Milburn librarian, my patrons have 3 holds on this specific title. There's 48 total holds as far as the consortium goes. The consortium owns 5 metered access titles or copies of this book, and then there's 3 of those are going to be shared titles. So you notice Milburn doesn't own this title, and then maybe, you know, if they want to kind of increase the likelihood that their patrons are going to get this book in a pretty timely fashion, they could purchase an additional copy here. So you notice that there's no details on the second line here other than the amount of holds for my library, because Milburn doesn't actually own this specific title. So again, you know, this is a snapshot of current holds at the current time. It's really helpful to filter for just your library to kind of gauge where your patrons are placing holds and maybe some of the titles that you don't necessarily own yet. So the other thing I wanted to point out as far as ownership details here is these 2 numbers here are going to be the total amount of titles that are owned by the consortium and then Advantage. So here you're looking at a list of the copies that are owned as a whole in the consortium. And then the second number is going to be just my individual Advantage library, and then it's going to actually show me how many units I have shared there as well. So again, when you're looking at some of these high-demand titles that don't have a lot of copies owned by the consortium, and my library doesn't own any either, and maybe there's a lot of holds on that particular title, that's likely going to be a title that's a good candidate for something that you might want to purchase in your Advantage account. So that's the current holds report. And then the next report we are going to look at, I will switch back to my PowerPoint real quick, is going to be the recommendations report. I know that Margaret mentioned to me yesterday that this is probably one that you guys tend to use pretty frequently as well. Again, something that's going to be used to kind of drive purchasing decisions. So I thought that this might be something that would be of interest to you guys. So this report's a cumulative history of all patron recommendations. So when a title that's recommended by a patron is purchased by someone in the group, that does not mean that the title is going to be removed from this report. So it's something to keep in mind when looking at this report. So basically, when a patron sees a title they'd like to borrow that hasn't been purchased by the consortium or your individual Advantage library, they have the option to recommend it via a link on your site. So this is because the consortium's enabled our recommend to library feature. So your patrons can actually recommend 3 titles every 7 days. So I'll switch over to Marketplace to kind of show you how this report functions. And you're going to find this report in the title activity section here, so it's not going to be one of those popular reports. And I'm going to click on recommended titles here. Luckily, this is the first time that Marketplace has been a little bit slow to respond today. So now we're looking at recommended titles. It looks like I had already filtered here by Milburn, but I'll just show you guys how to do that as well. So when you're running this report, you have some parameters available to you, pretty similar to what you saw in the checkout report. So you can actually filter this report to spit the data out by a variety of different things like branch, day, format, month, etc. here. I think the majority of you guys are probably going to use title, so that's what I'll use as the example here. And then again, you can actually highlight multiple branches here by clicking Control. But for our example today, we're just going to be concerned with the Milburn library. So you can also filter by formats here as well. So just as an example, if I just want to look at audiobooks, let's say, I haven't purchased as many audiobooks in my Advantage collection as ebooks, and I want to kind of grow that chunk of my Advantage collection, I can narrow down the recommendations to just audiobook recommendations placed in the last 30 days by only my patrons. If I update this, I can then get my results in a second here. So you'll see in the last month here, there's been 10 recommendations total. Each one only has one, so you do, in this example, you are going to kind of have to do a little bit of digging to see if anybody's purchased these titles. So again, these are all hyperlinks, so if I actually click into this floating Feldman's title, no one's actually purchased this yet. However, it is a pre-order, so this might not be the best candidate for something that I want to purchase. But in here, I believe there's another one. My goal here really is to show you guys if this was purchased by the consortium and you haven't purchased it yet in your Advantage collection, and you already kind of see some circulation happening on the consortium side of things, this is probably might be a good one to purchase in your Advantage account just because one of your patrons actually recommended it. But this is, again, just how you're going to see ownership details for each of these titles that are recommended. And you can actually add right to a cart from there. So if I want to, add this particular title, since it's taking me right into the shopping function, I can actually add this title to a cart right away from the report itself. So that's recommendations report. And the last report that I kind of wanted to take a look at with you guys today was another one that might be useful for those of you that are having to do some monthly or annual reporting. So this report is going to be the purchase orders report. So what it's going to show you is recent orders for a given time period. So again, you can kind of select the time period that you want to take a look at and then easily choose your billing account from the drop-down menu here to view the individual purchase orders that just your library has submitted during that time period. So you can see here, this is what it looks like in Marketplace when I select my particular library. But again, I will switch up to Marketplace and just show you actually what it looks like there. So this is one of those popular reports, again, that people tend to use quite frequently. So it's going to be in that purchase popular report section on the left-hand side. So if I run this report and I'm looking at the last 30 days only, I can again change the time period to specific date ranges. I can change it to a previous amount of months, years, just like the rest of the reports really in the Insights tab. And then the main thing that you're going to likely want to change here is going to be the billing account. So you can really take a look at any purchase orders placed by the rest of the consortium if you wanted to, but for this example, again, we're using Milburn. So I will choose Milburn here. And so these are the 3 purchase orders that the Milburn Library has placed in the last 30 days. And if I am doing some annual reporting and I just simply want to take a look at the number of units that I purchased in that time period, it's going to show you this right away here in this data at the bottom of the screen. And if it's a pretty lengthy list, like let's say, for example, I wanted to see the amount of units that I purchased for a given year, and that's all I care about, I can create a worksheet and Excel will make that a lot easier for me to tally up. And if I'm kind of concerned with what purchase order a particular title was in, or just kind of taking a look at to see what was inside a particular purchase order, these are all hyperlinks here in the order name and order ID. So if I click into one of those, it's actually going to give me a breakdown of what titles were in that purchase order, what their street date is, how many copies I purchased, what lending model that particular copy was purchased in, the cost, and then it actually gives an OverDrive site link so you can actually see what that title looks like on your website itself. It also is going to show you which titles, again, are highlighted in pink, so those are going to be pre-orders. And it's going to give you kind of a breakdown of the total amount, including pre-orders, which has yet to be invoiced. So that can be helpful for those of you as well. If you're more concerned with billing or invoicing, you're kind of trying to take a look at what you have upcoming, ready, or that will be billed in the future as far as pre-orders go. This is a nice place to view that sort of thing. So that's pretty much all I had. Those are the most commonly used reports. If anybody has specific questions on other reports that they've find themselves using regularly and want to chat about those as far as best practices, tips and tricks, things like that, I'm always available by phone. I'm a big email guy, but I actually prefer the phone. So if you guys are phone people too and you want to give me a call and walk through things together, I can do this and share my screen, or we can kind of take a look at it while we're both looking at the same thing. Always happy to do that. But as far as our contact information, I did want to share that with you guys as well. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, you do have a full team here that supports you. So myself, Nicole, and Kristen are always available. Again, I'll share this deck in case you guys want to make note of any of the contact information for the three of us. And I also included just the links to the resource center and then help as well. I know earlier today, Margaret had shot me an email about something pretty patron specific, which I'm guessing these types of questions come up pretty frequently. The first place I always start if I don't know something is honestly help.overdrive.com, because over the last 10 years, they've been just adding frequently asked questions to that website, and there's tons of great support articles for both library staff, really, if they have questions on something, and then a patron can use that website as well and find useful information. And then the resources center, you guys probably are pretty familiar with that, but there's a variety of print and digital marketing materials there that you can utilize, as well as past webcasts and then links to register for upcoming webcasts. There's actually one happening on the Lucky Day feature that some of you guys might have noticed just released last week. May have seen blog posts about it. I know I talked to Margaret about that yesterday. So there's an upcoming webcast in a couple weeks specifically on Lucky Day. And all of those slide decks that are presented during those webcasts are available for download. So if you're somebody that doesn't want to spend the time actually viewing the presentation, you can just download that PowerPoint and get all that relevant information that way as well. The other nice thing that I find really helpful, and honestly, when I'm searching for a book to read, I tend to go here, is collection development lists. So Kristen's team, like I said, they're all former librarians. They put together really great content lists. They're very specific, so there's things like Stranger Things read-alikes right now, which is great, obviously a very timely topic. So there's tons of lists that are holiday focused, read-alikes for hot TV shows, movies, that sort of thing. So these can be used for shopping and then also curation as well. So Resource Center and Help are great resources, but like I said, I'm always available by phone or email, and then Nicole and Kristen are here to help as well. I know I didn't see any questions in the chat, so hopefully everything I did was pretty easy to follow. I know I tend to talk fast, so I apologize, but I will send out the deck, and like I said, I'm available if anybody wants to reach out to me directly in the future.
We can hang out for a couple of minutes if anybody wants to shoot us a question. But yeah, feel free to go on with your day. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, guys.